So hello everyone, good to see you. Today I'd like to continue a little bit on the topic that was raised 2 sessions ago. There wasn't one of those sessions here in the room. There was one of the recordings online. I think it was session 261 or 62, something like that. It was about whether one should be active in these times or passive, or what's the correct mode of behaving. Question was something about, with the current times of coronavirus and all the various theories that are raised online, such as there's people who are anti-vaccines, some people are pro-vaccines, there are some people who are pro-lockdown, others are anti-lockdown, and they all have their reasons, and they present them, of course, more or less skillfully. And it's for many of us probably a huge overwhelm, a huge influx of information continuously bombards the mind and kinds of shapes and forms it in many ways. So that might give rise to that kind of confusion of, well, here's my stance. Let's say, for the sake of an argument, you are pro-vaccine. And so the question is, should you make a difference? Should you go out on the streets and join a counter-protest that goes against those people who are anti-vaccine? Should you stand up for your opinion? Should you go into arguments and fights with other people? Should you or should you step back and just let it pass? What if it's a value that is greatly important for you? Some people it's abortion, or no abortion, or all these current highly charged emotional topics. Recently, right now, it's again the topic of Black Lives Matter and these kind of demonstrations that are going on. And right now that's on everyone's mind. And so should you present your stance violently, loudly? Should you stand up for that? Is this important? Will it make a difference? These are questions that many people probably in the spiritual community are asking themselves as well. Is it better to just kind of mindfully observe one's own sensations and let them pass and be kind of passive about it? Or is it much better if you become an activist and you become active and you make a difference and you do something? Like, for example, you might look back to Mahatma Gandhi, who I think organized or at least took part in various peaceful protests. And he also achieved quite remarkable results with those protests, right? I think the same thing for Mother Teresa. I think one of her often quoted sayings is she was once invited to some sort of rally against war or something like this, and she said, well, if you organize a rally for peace, then I'll be glad to take part, or something like that. So there she shows something there, which is quite skillful. But here's the issue, I think. Too many people go out and become loud without having cleaned their own act. In other words, we are suffering. And so we go out on the street and we spread our suffering. And what do you think will the answer be to that? Well, resistance and counter movements. It's always the same. It's been throughout the history of humanity. Always the same. There is an aggression which is basically saying, please hear us out. We have an important message that matters to us. What happens? They gain followers, and as they gain momentum and become bigger and stronger, with their strength, their size, and their power, the power, strength, and size of the counter movement grows. Until those movements have built both so much power and strength that it becomes an inevitable clash, a release of energy. What's next? Rebuilding. This is all familiar to us. We all know it as a war. We build tension, aggression, anger and hate to such an extent where it explodes and releases in a gigantic destruction. Then it consumes everything we've built, everything we've worked for. And then we have to rebuild it. And these are always some of the times which are best for the economy. The times post-war. After a war, the economy starts to boom and flourish. New workplaces are generated. People become active, groups form. There's a whole lot of help and support, etc., etc. New governments come into place. It's fresh. The quiet after a storm has passed. And you can find that all over nature, that same kind of phenomenon. Say, for example, a volcano eruption. It's highly destructive and forceful event in nature, and yet it gives rise to fertile soil and some of the best vegetables and some of the best earth comes out of such a volcano eruption. It is a new start in many, many ways. Like this is often also symbolized with this image of a phoenix that rises from the ashes. This process of transformation of energy is very common in nature. Nature moves in cycles. You have the cycles of water, for example. Water turning into steam in the oceans, raising up into the sky, becoming a cloud. The cloud goes onto the countryside and releases itself. So then there is rain. The rain forms rivers, underwater reservoirs, under earth, like water reservoirs. They're filled up again, and those rivers all flow back into the sea. And so you have this kind of cycle going on with many things. The seasons of a year as such, the way the sun moves. The way Earth moves around the sun, the way the sun moves itself, yes, as well. All those are movements which are quite repetitive, and they always go up to one extreme, then unload into the other. So that's why in last session where I was talking about this, I was talking mostly about the fact that I don't feel in the position to make a judgment such as you should stand up for your rights, or you should not, and you should just remain quiet and peaceful, because it's too complicated. Actions are too complicated to predict. You do one thing and it leads to billions of things, not only for yourself but for everyone. So it's very complex. You think you're doing something good, but it's bad for someone else. And you didn't even notice that. And so you continue to do what you think is good to do. And you build a momentum and you make force. And it will, like a good example is, for example, the avocado farms, right? For people who love avocados. I don't know what the numbers are, but they are insane. You have to Google them. You have to check them out for yourself. Like how much one avocado or one avocado tree needs water, how much water they need to grow. It's pretty insane, and they grow these trees in areas of the world where there is hardly any water. And that creates huge problems for the farmers there and the villages there and so forth and so forth. So it's never that simple. It's like, avocados are good for you, yeah, but they're really bad in many other ways. Or it's good to go vegan. Go vegan, you must eat vegan food. It's the best thing you could do. Who knows? It makes so many people incredibly sick in so many ways. And this is after years and years of doing that. I think they're doing just the right thing. And yeah, turns out it's not always for everyone the right thing, in the same way. It's complicated. Therefore, if we act, we never know what it leads to. There's a story in Tibetan Buddhism that I've heard once. It's this story of a monk who sits there peacefully meditating outside in nature at a pond, a beautiful little pond, and then along comes a fisherman and starts to catch fish, right? And he catches one fish after the other, and he puts them all in a bucket next to him. And the monk sees that, and he feels compassion for those fish. He wants to save them. And like he waits for a moment when the fisherman goes somewhere else and, I don't know, gets maybe some lunch or goes to pee behind a bush or somewhere. So the monk stands up and he leaves his place, he goes to the bucket, he takes the bucket, and he thinks he's really clever and really kind, and he wants to help those fish. And so he releases them back into the pond. But by now the fish have become very weak. And there's one big fish in the pond. And that big fish is very happy because he can now eat all those weak fish. And so he eats one after the other, and the monk just looks on in shock. What have I done? It's a good little story that illustrates that sometimes you think you do good. Are you though? For whom is it good? For how long will it be good? And will it always stay good? Good questions to ask. Is the good that you do today still good tomorrow? Is the bad that you do today still bad tomorrow? Or might you go maybe after 5 years, you've done something bad and suddenly you realize, wow, if I wouldn't have done that 5 years ago, I wouldn't be who I am today. And you didn't know that until now, maybe. Maybe you did something you thought that was incredibly good, and it's today that you find out it got you into the worst kind of trouble. You could never imagine that kind of trouble could come from such a good thing. Happens all the time, and you've probably made many experiences such as these. Relationships are just one example. You think it's your absolute dream husband or dream wife, and a year later it turns out you just want to get rid of them as fast as possible. It's also very common. How many times do you think like, wow, I really need this right now, and then you go for it and you get it and you're ending up disappointed. So it's complicated. Actions and their results are incredibly complex. Maybe a good way to visualize the way actions work is with a tree. The tree produces fruit. Fruit produces seed. Let's say an apple, right? An apple produces, how many seeds are in an apple usually? I don't know. You have any number? I don't know. That's a lot of seeds, right? Maybe 20. I don't know. 20? Did I say a stupid thing?
I can say 20.
Huh?
So like, I count in 4 parts and every time, no more than 3.
No more than 3, yes?
Per quarter. So
Per quarter. 12, so around 12. Okay, so you have like 12 apple. You have let's say 12, around about 12 seeds. Okay, I'm sure somebody will Google it and find it out. So you have these 12 little seeds in there. Those are 12 potential trees. We tend to forget that, right? Because you can plant them, and they can turn into trees. If they're nourished properly, they'll turn into 12 apple trees. Now, each one of those trees will produce apples. And each one of those apples, again, contains around about 12 trees. And if you just let nature by itself, then it will just reproduce like this. Some seeds will flourish, others not. But it's a constant reproduction. And it's impossible to say how many trees come from one tree and where that one tree came from. Impossible to say. But you can say for sure it came from a seed. That's sure. But where did the seed come from? We don't know. Was it transported to the place by a bird, by wind, a bee? Who knows? We can't look back at that. And this network is infinitely vast and complex. There's every single atom in nature and its relation to all other atoms. It's incredibly complex. Way too complex to understand. Every moment of your mind counts as an action. Every thought, every movement of attention is an action. And every action has a result, the following moment of experience. And every time you act, it has an impact on everybody that's around you. Whether you're acting internally, with your attention, how you move it, your emotional state has an impact on everybody who is around. It quickly becomes super complex. I encourage you to reflect in this way so you understand it's not a black and white thing. It's not like, do good and good things will happen to you. Very often it's the opposite. You might do good and get shot. Wasn't Gandhi shot? He did a lot of quote-unquote good. Wasn't good for some. It was bad for others. So the result of it is get shot. One of the most famous guys who got tortured for being good is Jesus. But he wasn't good for others. He had a lot of enemies. Even the Buddha had a lot of enemies. Lots of the saints have lots of enemies. That's very common. And they try to do a lot of good. I try to help people, support them, be there for them. But also very often they mess with power structures because they're quite liberated and free. They're not adhering to those structures. So they're not easily influential. You can't just command them around and make them do things. They're very different. So often they have tough lives as a result. You think, wow, they're so good, right? But lots of trouble, lots of problems for them. I know lots of people who are very high level in their development of mind. They do experience quite a lot of resistance, a lot of problems. It's not easy. What I would therefore do is act mindfully. I know the best thing you could probably be doing is act mindfully and watch. Where am I coming from when I'm acting? Here's a good guidance system, kind of. If you're coming from anger, and by the way, there's no such thing as righteous anger, there is anger, period. If you're coming from anger, you planned anger, and anger will grow from your seeds. If you're coming from kindness, you will plant kindness and it will grow. That's the only thing we can know. We have to bring our mind back to ourselves, therefore. Like trying to change other people or trying to change the world is insanity. First of all, we're not qualified to be God. And that's kind of like a God syndrome. I want to change the world. I want to make the world a better place. Like, seriously, are you qualified? Can you make yourself a better person? Is that even possible or not? Can you start there? Is that possible? Then maybe start there, right? This is what I meant when I said in the beginning of the talk, clean up your own act first. Before we start reaching out, trying to change the world or trying to change other people, there is a lot of work to be done in ourselves. It's our own house that has to be brought in order first. It has to be made a pleasant place to live first. The way I say it would be, free the world from your problem. Free the world from your pain. That's a very good first start. And of course, if we all would be doing that, the world would be saved. Yeah, but now you cannot walk around and force people to let go of their pain. Try. It's one of the hardest things ever. It's my daily work to work together with people who want to change. And for them it's so hard already. You guys know, right? And I know from myself how it's the hardest thing in the world to change myself. It's so much more easy to follow my impulses. It's so much more easy to just do what I think is good to do, rather than what might actually benefit myself or others around me. It's very hard. So we can start by making a difference in our own household. Instead of thinking about grand revolutions, can we fix ourselves? Then afterwards, our own family and household. How do I relate to my family? Are people feeling comfortable around me? Do they hold grudges? Are they angry? Is there hate? Is there conflict? Is there trouble? Am I asserting myself properly? Being kind to your family, by the way, doesn't mean that you let people walk all over you. You gotta have principles. And if it is time to stand up for your principles, you have to stand up for them. Sometimes it might be your principle not to kill or take any life. Let's say that as an example. It is my principle not to kill. Now somebody tells you from your family, can you take this spray and kill the ants in front of my house, please? And if you wouldn't do it, all hell will break loose. There would be anger, there would be fighting, you and your stupid rules, and why are you not doing it? So let me do it. And then, all this kind of ugliness ensues. Can you maneuver that? Can you assert yourself without creating trouble for yourself? Can you distance yourself from other people's trouble and see the difference clearly? This is your trouble. That's mine. I let go of my trouble. You could let go of yours if you wanted to, but that's your business. Can you separate it like that? That's a good start. As I mentioned, I think in the other talk, there's this saying from Shantideva, you cannot wrap the whole world in leather, so you're not stepping in thorns, but you can wrap your own 2 feet, and it has the same effect. So trying to change the world and trying to change people around you and making it all a better place, it is dependent on you being a better person, so to say. That means let go of your anger, let go of your fear, let go of your worries. Can you do that? And once you see how difficult that is, then you will stop asking others to do that, because you know it's just way too difficult and time-consuming to do it yourself. So instead of looking at other people, you're way too busy doing it yourself. Instead of asking everyone around you to stop worrying, you stop worrying about them. Much better. So it's one person less that worries at least. It's a simple mathematics, really. If you do it, the world has a problem less. If you wait for all others to do it, the problems remain the same. And it will not change. Look at what Gandhi has done. And look now. Things come back, because the root problem hasn't changed. The root of all problems. What's that? Where do all problems in this world come from? They come from the mind, and they come from the mind that is imbued with identification. It is a mind that is not released. It is a mind full of tension. It is a mind that is not open. So, such a mind gives rise to problems. That's the real problem. The real problem is our mind. It's not blacks or whites or presidents or population. It doesn't matter. These are not the real problems. These are mere symptoms. They are symptoms. If you look around the world, you find nothing but symptoms. War is a symptom of an unhealthy mind. In group formation, it's a group of unhealthy minds versus another group of unhealthy minds. If you want to ever change the problems of this world, drop them in your own mind. It's the only way, in my opinion, only way to do any change. Then you will do the world a service as well. You will help. You will really help. Any other help is merely like it's kind of changing your physical posture. You're merely shifting around pain. You're not solving it. You're not getting out of it. It just goes from the left knee into the right knee and then into your back and so forth. It's never ending. The physical pain doesn't end. Expecting it to end is insanity. Thinking that my body should not have pain is crazy. It's like saying there should only be daytime, or the sun should only shine ever. It would destroy everything. Imagine the sun would shine forever. Oh yeah, you think it's nice? Imagine that. It doesn't work. Nature is not like that. It's very dynamic. And everything is okay. I mean, there's a bit of sunshine and there's a bit of rain and there's climate change. It belongs. There's a cause, there's a result. Simple as that. Nature doesn't make mistakes. It responds. There's simply cause and result. That's all there is. So as there is cause and result, you kind of are limited to looking at yourself and asking yourself, what am I doing right now? Does that make a difference for myself? Does that get me out of my suffering a little bit more? Through letting go of that, am I a bit more happy, a bit more released, a bit more open, a bit more relaxed? Good, keep going. Keep going. You're serving the world. You're serving yourself. Is it the only way? You can see, it boggles my mind that after hundreds and thousands of years of human existence on this planet, we're doing the same thing over and over and over again, blaming others for our own suffering. Because it's like, how can we not see it? It's what the Buddha refers to as ignorance, blindness, darkness of the mind. We cannot see that the one who suffers is the root of all problems. And it's you. It's me. Okay, so that's all for tonight. Are there any questions?